History likes to pretend success is tidy. Life is messy, eh? A lot of the time it looks like this. A villager picks the worst possible hill to die on. A promising officer walks away from his career. A farmhand ignores books. A disabled kid bets everything on art. And a dockhand keeps saying yes to terrible jobs. The neighbors shake their heads. The smart people laugh. And then, slowly, the dumb choice starts to win. Let's walk the muddy streets, crowded markets, village churches and foggy docks where these 5 too dumb to fail stories actually played out. Zera Yacob, Ethiopia. 17th century Ethiopia. The highlands are full of small stone villages, tight terraced fields, and churches that anchor every community. Faith is not a hobby, it is the law of the land. A new emperor has decided there is only one acceptable version of Christianity, and he is prepared to enforce it. The safe move for any educated man is simple. Keep your head down, recite the right creed, stop asking clever questions. Zera Yacob does the exact opposite. He argues with priests in public. He points out contradictions in sermons. At village markets, while people trade grain and coffee, he quietly tells friends that God cannot be as cruel or petty as the rules suggest. That is not just awkward. It is dangerous. Officials start to notice his name. For a man with no army and no powerful patron, that is a very bad trend line. Instead of fixing it in the usual way, by apologizing or switching sides, he does something that looks like pure surrender. He leaves everything. Picture him stepping off the main road with a small bundle of food and a battered book of Psalms, climbing a stony hillside above the Tekes Valley. Traders move along the track below with donkeys and goats. He disappears into a cave in the rock. For neighbors in the village, this is insane. A promising mind, now a hermit. No students, no income, no influence. Just a man in a hole. Inside that cave, life is boring and hard. He wakes with the light, prays, reads the same few pages again and again. He listens to distant church bells and arguments from the road below, and slowly decides that if a rule does not fit reason and compassion, it cannot be from God. He tests every command he was given as a child. He imagines arguing with Jews, Christians, and Muslims in the same room, all of them held to the same standard by logic. Years later, he walks back out into the world with a handwritten treatise that says slavery is evil. Women are equal to men, and no religious institution is above question. The man everyone thought had thrown his life away in a cave ends up sounding like he is writing a century ahead of the European Enlightenment. Now jump to 18th century Stockholm. The harbor is crowded with tall masts. Officers stride along the quay in smart blue uniforms, talking about promotions and campaigns. For a young naval man, the path is obvious. Stay in the capital. Stay near the Admiralty. Get noticed at the right dinners. Climb. Joachim Hård, F. Segerstad, is on that track. He has the training, the connections, the uniform. Then he starts talking about leaving it all to manage some family land deep in the countryside. For his peers, this is baffling. You do not leave the center of power to count cows. On the day he goes, imagine the contrast. He walks past stone warehouses and shipyards one last time, then takes the long road inland. Days later, he steps down from a carriage into a muddy yard at Gudhamn. No red farmhouses. A lake in the distance. Ox carts. Tenants waiting at sacks of rye instead of polished officers waiting with reports. The smart voices in Stockholm assume this is where his story ends. No more serious assignments. No real influence. A once promising officer, buried under ledgers and manure. Running estates is not romantic. He walks the fields in bad weather, checks boundary stones, argues with tax collectors who turn up in horse-drawn carts, One harvest fails. Then another comes in, only barely adequate. He has to decide whether to press desperate farmers for rent or risk his own debts. There are long winter nights at a wooden table under a smoky lamp, balancing columns of numbers while the wind rattles shutters. It looks like he chose a smaller, duller life, until the pressures that seemed far away reach the farms. War disrupts trade. A late frost threatens famine. The capital needs grain and timber. Peasants need credit and protection. Suddenly, the man who walked away from the Navy becomes the link that keeps hundreds of people fed. He uses his knowledge of logistics and discipline from the fleet to run storage, loans and deliveries in a way most landowners cannot. The career that looked like a step down becomes the quiet hinge that holds a piece of the kingdom together. In the English village of Elmton in the mid-18th century, the classroom is cramped and cold. A schoolmaster scratches letters on a board. Children repeat phrases from the Bible. One boy, Jedediah Buxton, struggles to keep up. He stares at the floor. He trips over basic reading. The teacher eventually gives up. The conclusion in a place like this is simple. If you cannot handle words, you are destined for the fields and nothing more. Jedediah accepts the fields, but not that verdict. Day after day, he walks from cottage to farm in worn shoes, crossing furrows and stone walls. To anyone watching, he looks like any other laborer. Head down, quiet, solid. The villagers joke that he is not much for thinking. Inside his skull, it is loud. Every step he takes is another number. He counts his paces and multiplies, then converts the whole field into square inches. He looks at the church tower and wonders how many bricks it took. He hears someone in the tavern boast about a distant army of thousands, and instantly starts squaring and squaring until he has a number too big for anyone else in the room to picture. People in Elmton think he is odd because he often seems distracted. He is doing calculations they cannot see. Word leaks out. A visiting clergyman hears about the human measuring stick and decides to test him. Jedediah answers calmly, without chalk or slate. The story travels up the social ladder until it reaches London and the Royal Society. That is like a farm boy today getting a call from a National Science Academy. Picture the scene. Polished wood panels, portraits of serious men on the walls, candles in brass holders. Into this world walks a laborer in plain country clothes, boots still carrying dust from village lanes. Learned gentlemen sit with notebooks, ready to prove that this is a silly rural myth. They read out strings of numbers that would make most people's eyes glaze over. Jedediah listens, nods once, and begins to answer. He builds huge products in his head, digit by digit. He keeps them straight for minutes at a time, then speaks them back while his audience scrambles to follow. The man who looked like a failure in school is now doing mental feats that trained mathematicians struggle to match. If stories like this surprise you, tell me which one deserves a full deep dive next. Now the sun is sharp and high over Malaga in the early 20th century. On a steep hill above the port, children race down stone steps. In the middle of them, one boy moves differently. He leans on a stick, swings his bad leg through each step, and drags behind the others. Neighbors know him as the lame kid from the poor street. Work in this city is physical. Porters, fishermen, factory hands. Betting on a stage career with a body that already struggles to cross the market square looks like a fantasy. His parents worry. They push him toward any work he can physically manage. Errands, light labor, anything stable. He tries some of it and fails. Factories are unforgiving. The docks are worse. Bosses do not want a worker who slows the line. What he has instead is a voice. At night, when the day's disappointment is over, he slips into bars near the harbor, where old posters peel from the walls. Guitars rest against chairs. Men who spent the day hauling nets now sit over small glasses of wine. The boy asks, shyly at first, to join in a song. Flamenco is not polite music. It is raw and intense. When he sings, at first people are just being nice. Then something shifts. He bends the notes in a way that makes conversation stall. The clink of glasses fades. He drags the room's attention into the lyrics, into stories of pain that feel very close to his own. Regulars remember. The lame kid is now El Kojo, the lame one, but the nickname starts to carry respect. Tavern owners move tables so there is space for him to stand. Guitarists make sure they are there on the nights he plans to sing. Over years, his circle widens. The same voice that once bounced off smoky bar walls is invited into theaters and into the massive public rituals of Holy Week. Picture streets packed tight, candles everywhere, heavy floats swaying under the weight of carved saints. From a balcony, crutch leaning against the rail, he lets out a sida, a piercing improvised song. The entire procession seems to hold its breath. The path that looked ridiculous for a disabled child in a working port has turned him into one of the city's main emotional channels. People still call him El Kojo de Malaga, but now the name sits on posters and record labels, not whispered in pity. The wind grows colder along a small harbor in Nova Scotia in the early 20th century. Wooden boats ride low in the water under the weight of cod, and gulls circle and scream above the masts. The air smells like salt, damp rope, and coal smoke from small engines. In a town like this, most people dream of owning something solid, whether it is a boat, a corner store, or a strip of land. Anything that might free them from the constant mercy of weather, debt, and bosses. Charles Kelly, known to everyone as Turkey for reasons no one can fully explain, does not look like a man who will ever escape that grind. Day after day, he works the same wharf, taking whatever shifts he can and accepting the jobs other men refuse. When a shipment arrives in sleet at an ugly hour, he joins the crew without complaint. When a run needs to be made to a tiny cove that barely appears on maps, he signs on. When work is scarce and the only option is hauling mixed freight that no one wants to touch, he shrugs and agrees. Up in the tavern that looks down over the harbor, his choices become a running joke. Other dockworkers tell him he is letting the owners walk over him. Shopkeepers shake their heads and say he is too soft to get ahead. The advice is always the same. He should hold out for better terms or leave for a city where there are more chances. What they miss is that every one of those bad jobs comes with information and contact. Each shift brings moments with key holders unlocking back doors, clerks counting crates in cramped offices, and tired captains muttering about their problems over a final drink. While he trudges along the pier with a hook in his hand, Turkey is quietly building a map of how everything in this harbor moves. He pays attention to which fishing families are always late but always pay, which are one bad storm away from ruin, and which merchants step in when times are tight rather than turning their backs. He notices which captains can be trusted to carry a message to the next harbor, which crews handle rough weather without panicking, and which parts of the wharf flood first when the tide and wind turn ugly. One autumn, a storm arrives at exactly the wrong moment. Several boats are damaged. A bridge on the main road washes out, and a shipment of fuel ends up stranded 2 harbors away. The neat plans written in offices far from the coast fall apart in a single night. Schedules mean nothing. People suddenly realize how little control they have. In the middle of the confusion, someone on the dock says, "Ask Turkey." He knows who can move it. The man who always seemed stuck at the bottom of the ladder starts to arrange a chain of swaps and favors. He convinces one captain to part with fuel in exchange for a promise of crew help in the next season. He finds space in a warehouse that most people assumed was full, He persuades the owner of a small boat to risk an extra run through sheltered channels that only the most experienced locals know how to navigate. He does all of this standing on the same warped planks he has always worked on, pencil tucked behind his ear, coat flapping in the wind and waves slapping the pilings below. By the time winter closes in, the pattern is obvious. If you want your cargo off the boat and onto carts before the next freeze, you do not just speak to company representatives or office clerks. You go and find Turkey Kelly, the dockhand who never moved up in the way people expected, has quietly become the living network that keeps the town breathing. History often tells success stories in reverse. It starts with the polished outcome, when someone looks brilliant and inevitable, and skips the long years when their choices appeared foolish, stubborn, or naive. Zera Yacob walking into a cave far from power. Joachim leaving the capital for fields and mud. Jedediah staring at the floor while schoolmasters despair. El Kojo trusting his damaged body to carry songs in Turkey. Kelly accepting every miserable job on the wharf. All looked like mistakes when they were happening. Seen from the middle of their lives, none of those decisions looked smart. They looked like poor judgment or simple refusal to do what sensible people advised. Only with time do the patterns emerge and the combination of luck, timing, and quiet strategy become clear. That is the uncomfortable truth woven through these stories. We are very bad at predicting who will matter. The plans that sound clever in the tavern or the boardroom often fade away, while the choices that seem too odd or too dumb to bother with sometimes end up reshaping a village, a harbor, or the way people think about the world.